Hello, homie. Listen closely, slow your breathing, grab your popcorn, and don't blink too fast. Because whether you've admitted it to yourself or not, something happened in that moment. That moment, the world didn't just watch you, it malfunctioned trying to understand you. People swear it was just a move you made, a decision you executed, a shift you stepped into. But deep down, you know it was more than that. It was a rupture in perception, a rip in the choreography of reality. A moment where every person who thought they had you mapped out suddenly felt the ground tilt under them. It wasn't a highlight. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't even a breakthrough. It was an impact, a vibration that hit the human collective like a direct strike to the nervous system. And the craziest part? You weren't even trying. You weren't pushing your limit. You weren't flexing your strength. You weren't showcasing your full form. You were just moving the way your evolution has been quietly shaping you to move. That's why they froze. That's why they stalled. That's why their reactions didn't make sense at first. You weren't just good. You weren't impressive. You weren't surprising. You broke something. You cracked open a moment in time. You made the world skip like reality forgot its lines. People who saw it swear they need to re-watch it. So they did. Not once, not twice, 69 times. Because their brains kept insisting they must have missed something. They must have blinked wrong. They must have miscalculated. They must have misunderstood what they saw. Because people don't move like that. People don't shift like that. People don't break the script like that. But you did. And the moment it happened, the atmosphere changed. The energy tightened. The air felt heavier. A pressure formed that nobody could explain. It wasn't a trick of the lights. It wasn't adrenaline. It was activation. You felt that, didn't you? That hum behind your ribs, that pull in the back of your mind, that sharp stillness inside your bones, a stillness that didn't feel like calm, but like preparation, like something ancient inside you opened its eyes for the first time in years. Like a part of you that's been waiting for this exact moment finally stretched its arms and whispered, "Finally." That's why people reacted the way they did. They didn't see a move. They witnessed a shift. A shift that wasn't supposed to happen yet. A shift you weren't supposed to reach this early. A shift that made the watchers recalibrate everything they thought they knew about you. Because the truth is simple. They didn't expect you to access that level yet. They thought you were still warming up, still figuring things out, still healing from the damage life had carved into your mind, still carrying the weight of old wounds, still holding yourself back out of habit, fear, exhaustion, responsibility, humility, whatever story they wrote for you. They thought the old you was still in control. They thought the version of you molded by heartbreak and restraint was still calling the shots. They thought you were still working on yourself, not realizing you've been building yourself quietly, ruthlessly, strategically behind closed doors. But they were wrong. Because what they saw wasn't the person they remember. What they saw was a glimpse of who you've become, and who you're becoming still. You have to understand something. People don't freeze because they're impressed. They freeze because they're overwhelmed. They freeze because their instincts can't categorize what they're seeing. They freeze because something in you contradicts everything they thought they knew about human limits. That's what your moment did. That's what your move did. That's what your shift did. You took the blueprint they had for you and snapped it clean in half. And in that split second, something shifted in them too. They understood, even if they didn't want to, even if they'll never say it out loud, even if they pretend it wasn't a big deal. They understood that you're not operating on the wavelength you used to. You're not moving through life like someone trying to survive anymore. You're moving like someone who knows exactly where they're heading and isn't afraid to break the walls in front of them to get there. They felt that. They saw that. They watched it unfold in slow motion. The way you stepped, the way you chose, the way you executed something nobody trained your mind to do. It didn't look rehearsed. It didn't look planned. It looked instinctive. And instinct at that level isn't taught. It's built. Through pressure, through pain, through endurance, through transformation that happens quietly in the dark while the world assumes you're still stumbling. That's why the moment you made that move, everything shifted. The watchers looked different. The doubters swallowed their words. The ones who misjudged you felt their stomach drop. Even the people who believed in you found themselves breathless because they didn't expect you to leap that far ahead yet. They didn't expect you to unlock a door they didn't even know was in front of you. And the truth, you didn't expect it either. Not fully, not consciously. But something in you has been pacing for months. Something in you has been pressurizing under the surface. Something in you has been waiting for permission until you realized you never needed permission in the first place. You ever wonder why certain moments feel heavier than others? Why one action carries the weight of 1,000 unspoken histories? It's because that action wasn't just you moving. It was every version of you moving at once. Past you, present you, future you, all aligning for a single second, all pouring their strength, their memory, their endurance into one movement, all merging into a single impact. That's why the atmosphere shifted. That's why people watching felt their chest tighten. Because they didn't see one person, they saw a convergence. They saw the sum of eras collapsing into one act. And the part that scares them the most, you weren't even in your final alignment. That wasn't your peak. That wasn't your limit. That wasn't the best you can do. That was an accident, a slip, a spark, a fraction leaking out. A preview, not a performance, and yet it was enough to freeze the moment around you, like time itself hesitated, like reality leaned in closer, trying to understand what it just witnessed, like the world paused not because you did something impressive, but because something inside you revealed itself. Do you know what that means? It means you've stepped into a range of yourself you can't unstep from. It means the old restraints don't fit you anymore. It means the old doubts don't reach you anymore. It means the old version of you, the one who second-guessed every move, doesn't have authority here. You entered a new frequency, one that doesn't bend for anyone's expectations. And that's why the watchers reacted the way they did. They felt the difference. They felt the pressure. They felt the intensity radiating off you like heat rising from concrete. It wasn't ego. It wasn't confidence. It wasn't pride. It was presence. Presence born from transformation, so deep and layered it doesn't need explanation. That presence terrifies people, especially those who underestimated you, because they were comfortable with the version of you that questioned your worth. They were comfortable with the version of you that over-explained yourself. They were comfortable with the version of you that dimmed your abilities to make others feel secure. They were comfortable with the version of you that carried wounds quietly, so others wouldn't feel guilty for causing them. But when you made that move, the one that broke reality for a moment, they saw a different version of you. A version that doesn't wait to be understood. A version that doesn't shrink to fit. A version that isn't here to be predictable, safe, manageable, or familiar. That version is here to rewrite the air when they enter the room. And that's exactly what you did. You rewrote the air. You bent the atmosphere. You disrupted the unspoken choreography everyone else was unconsciously following. You turned the entire moment into a ripple effect people are still processing. And the craziest part? You didn't announce it. You didn't warn anyone. You didn't hint at it. You just did it, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Because to you, it was. You didn't step out of character. You stepped into character, into the version of yourself you've been growing into without even realizing it. That's why people replayed it 69 times. Not because it looked cool, not because it shocked them, but because their mind refused to accept how effortlessly you broke the frame around you. They kept watching, trying to decode it, trying to find the moment where you hesitated, where you flinched, where you doubted. But there was none. They watched again and again, trying to catch the human limit they swear must be hidden somewhere. But it wasn't. Because you didn't operate from human limit. You operated from something else entirely, something deeper, something sharper, something forged from the parts of you most people never see. And now they're confused. Because once someone witnesses a moment like that, they can't go back to pretending you're ordinary. They can't go back to seeing you the way they used to. They can't unsee the version of you that emerged for that split second. And that's what's bothering them. That's what's keeping them analyzing, rewinding, overthinking. Because people fear what they cannot measure. And you just revealed a side of yourself they have no measurement for. And that realization has been sitting inside their chest like a weight they can't name, and a truth they don't want to face. Because the moment you broke reality for that instant, every assumption they built around you cracked like glass. That's the part they don't want to admit, that the version of you they were comfortable with no longer exists, that the old calibration they used to rely on no longer works, that the way they used to read you, predict you, categorize you had its foundation ripped apart by one move you didn't even think twice about. People think they're scared of danger, but they're not. They're scared of unpredictability. They're scared of someone who can do something extraordinary without warning. And you did exactly that. You moved in a way that wasn't scripted, wasn't rehearsed, wasn't expected, wasn't taught. It was instinctive. An instinct at that level can't be tamed. What they're experiencing right now is recalibration, not just mentally. Their entire nervous system is adjusting itself around the new version of you. They're replaying the moment because their mind needs evidence. Proof. Something logical to cling to. But every replay only makes things worse because each time they slow it down, zoom into it, analyze it, they realize the same disturbing truth. You weren't lucky. You weren't guessing. You weren't improvising. You snapped into a mode that doesn't come from training. It comes from transformation. A transformation too rapid and too intense for them to understand. You ever notice how quiet people get after they witness something they can't explain? They don't talk right away. They don't react loudly. They freeze. Their face shifts. Their breathing changes. That's what's happening with them now. They're retreating into their own thoughts, trying to figure out when you became capable of that. Trying to remember the last time they saw you, uncertain, lost, insecure, and why none of that showed up in that moment. Trying to reconcile the person they thought you were with the person you actually are now, and failing miserably. Because the truth is, You didn't evolve in front of them. You evolved behind the scenes, behind closed doors, in the moments nobody else witnessed. They didn't see the pressure you survived. They didn't see the nights you endured. They didn't see the self-confrontations, the inner battles, the rebirths, the resets, the upgrades. They didn't see the internal rewiring that shaped you into someone who moves without hesitation. They only saw the outcome, and that outcome shook them. That's why they're replaying it 69 times, because every time they watch it, they see something new. The precision, the timing, the shift in your posture, the calm in your presence, the clarity in your execution. Every detail feels too sharp, too clean, too decisive for someone they assumed was still figuring things out. But you weren't figuring anything out. You were remembering what you're capable of. And remembering is more dangerous than discovering. Because remembering implies you always had this in you. It was just locked away, waiting for the moment you would need it. The watchers can't deal with that idea. It unsettles them. Because if you had this level inside you all along, then what else have you been hiding? What else have you been suppressing? What other layers are waiting to unfold? If one accidental move could break the moment around you, what happens when you do something intentionally? What happens when you aim? What happens when you stop pulling back? That's the question burning in their thoughts now, even if they pretend not to care. They're not thinking, how did they do that? They're thinking, what happens when they do something bigger? Because if you froze the moment without trying, imagine the impact when you actually decide to unleash the full range of your capability. And that's exactly what terrifies them. Not the move you made, but the possibilities it revealed. The possibilities you haven't even accessed yet. You ever wonder why certain people suddenly start acting overly polite, overly cautious, overly observant around you? It's because they don't trust their own perception anymore. They don't trust their instincts around you. They don't trust their ability to predict how you'll behave or what you'll become. They saw one move, and it erased every assumption they had. That's why their tone shifted. That's why their gaze lingers longer. That's why their mind races behind their eyes. They're not just seeing you, they're assessing you, evaluating you, trying to decode a pattern that no longer exists. The truth is, your move was more than a moment. It was a signal, not a warning, a declaration. A declaration that your potential is no longer contained by the expectations others placed on you. A declaration that the version of you they thought they had outgrown, outsmarted, overpowered, overshadowed, is no longer running the show. A declaration that whatever internal process you've been going through has finally reached its ignition point. People who witnessed it won't admit it, but that single moment forced them to confront their own limitations. Because when someone sees another person rise beyond what they believed was possible, it triggers something inside them. A mixture of awe, envy, confusion, and fear. Awe because your movement was too controlled to dismiss. Envy because they wish they could do something like that. Confusion because nothing logically explains how you pulled it off. And fear because if you can do that without effort, you might be capable of far more than they ever imagined. That combination is what keeps them stuck on replay. They're not trying to understand the move. They're trying to prepare themselves for whatever comes next. They're trying to anticipate your next evolution. But they can't. Because you've crossed into a version of yourself that doesn't show its hand before moving. You've become unpredictable in the most controlled way. And unpredictability backed by precision is the most dangerous kind. You have to understand, people have a psychological threshold. They can handle improvement. They can handle growth. They can handle progress. But they cannot handle transcendence. They cannot handle a leap so massive it breaks continuity. You didn't grow gradually, you jumped. And jumps like that feel supernatural to the human mind. Not magical, not mystical, just unexplainable, unreasonable, out of proportion. That's what your moment was, out of proportion. And when something is out of proportion, it demands a new mental category. That's why people's behavior changed. That's why conversations around you feel different. That's why individuals who once convinced themselves they were above you suddenly hesitate. Your presence doesn't sit inside their expectations anymore. You stepped outside their measurement tools. And once someone steps outside measurement, they step into influence. Because influence isn't about popularity. Influence is about distortion. The ability to make people question what they know when they look at you. The ability to rewrite the air when you enter a room. The ability to force recalibration without saying a word. That's the level you touched when you made that move. And even though it lasted only a moment, the impact continues to echo. What they don't realize is that this wasn't your first time unlocking that range. It was just the first time the world noticed. You felt that shift before in private. You felt that inner strength flicker. You felt that surge in your awareness. You felt that alignment in your chest that makes you breathe differently. But you never put it into motion publicly. The timing wasn't right. You weren't ready, and the world wouldn't have understood. But now, everything's different. Your internal timing changed. Your external presence changed. Your awareness changed. The things that used to weigh you down no longer have the same pull. The things that used to distract you no longer hold your attention. The insecurities that used to whisper in your ear no longer have access to the room. The doubts that used to control your decisions now dissolve before you even acknowledge them. You didn't just step into a higher version of yourself. You stepped into a different realm of ability. That's what people are sensing. That's what they're trying to process. That's why their reactions feel inconsistent. Because part of them wants to congratulate you, and another part wants to keep their distance. Not because you scared them, but because you exposed how unaware they were of your true capacity. This is what happens when someone evolves past the point of predictability. They become a reference point instead of part of the crowd. They become someone others measure themselves against, not someone they measure. And that's exactly where you're standing now. You've become a reference point. That's why your move froze the moment. It wasn't the move itself. It was the realization that everything people thought they knew about you was outdated the second you did it. You know what's wild? Even people who weren't there, even people who didn't witness the moment directly, can feel the shift in the energy around you. They don't know the details, but they sense the aftershock. They feel the difference in how others speak about you. They see the shift in how people interact with you. They notice the recalculation happening in conversations that mention your name. A moment like that doesn't stay contained. It radiates outward, sending signals through social, emotional, and psychological channels. Because when someone breaks reality for a moment, the world doesn't just watch, it adapts. And guess what? This adaptation has only just begun. Your moment wasn't the climax. It was the ignition, the first flare of something much larger, the preview of a transformation that hasn't fully unfolded yet. You're still sharpening, still aligning, still rising, still stepping into the full range of what that moment awakened inside you. And the watchers? They're still trying to understand how to respond, even though the next phase is already brewing beneath your skin. You can feel it, can't you? That pressure building, that restlessness forming, that pull in your chest. Something inside you is pacing, waiting for the next opening, waiting for the next moment where your instinct takes the lead, waiting for the next shift where your potential leaks out again. What you did wasn't random. It was the first spark of the next version of you, a version that won't hesitate, won't shrink, won't question, won't slow down for anyone's comfort. Because the truth is, the next rupture you cause won't be accidental. It'll be intentional. And the world isn't ready for that. See, the moment you broke reality for that instant, the world thought it witnessed a peak. But you know better. Peaks don't feel like this. Peaks feel final, complete, closing. What you're feeling is ignition, a sense of something opening, stretching, forming behind your ribs, like a force that refuses to be contained anymore. That force isn't satisfied with one moment of shock. It wants continuation, expansion, revelation. Not to impress people, but to release the version of you that has been sharpening itself for years. People think breaking reality is a dramatic phrase, but anyone who truly observed what you did knows it wasn't exaggeration, it was accurate. Because you didn't just surprise people. You made their mental framework short-circuit. You made their perception bend. You made their instincts misfire. You made their confidence crack. Reality isn't the ground, the sky, the walls. Reality is the invisible script people think they understand, and you tore through it in one move. That's why their world shook. Not because you did something wild, but because you did something they had no category for. And here's where things get even more interesting. They thought that was the end of it. They thought you would go back to normal. They thought you would shrug it off. They thought you would dim down again, pretend nothing happened, pretend you didn't feel that activation rising from somewhere deep inside you. But that's the problem. You did feel it. And once felt, it can't be unfelt. Once awakened, it can't be dormant again. You didn't just unlock a skill. You unlocked a frequency of yourself that refuses to be quiet. Look around you. The world moved on, but it didn't go back to the same position. People walk differently around you. They speak differently. They watch you with a mixture of caution and fascination. They don't know whether you're calming down or gearing up. They don't know whether that moment was a one-time phenomenon or the beginning of something permanent. And the truth? You don't fully know either. But you can feel that it's closer to the second. You can feel the build-up. You can feel the pressure forming like a second heartbeat. You can feel the unspoken momentum gathering inside you with a rhythm that doesn't match anything you felt before. That momentum is the future version of you trying to anchor itself in the present. Not just the version people fear, but the version the universe has been whispering to you about. The version you're meant to become. The version that will make everything you've gone through make sense. The version that will make every setback, every betrayal, every wound, every inner collapse worth it. Because you weren't meant to stay broken. You were meant to use the cracks as access points. And that moment you created, when the world froze and stared, was the first leak of your true potential through those cracks. They ran it back 69 times because denial is a fragile defense mechanism, and every replay chipped away at their denial until it turned into reluctant acknowledgement. People don't rewind something 69 times unless it threatens everything they believed about themselves. And that's the real reason your moment shook them. It didn't just reveal something about you, it revealed something about them, about their limits, their comfort zones, their lack of transformation, their lack of courage, their lack of evolution. Watching you do something that defied their understanding made them realize how much they've been holding themselves back. But that's their journey, their burden, their confrontation. What matters now is what that moment awakened in you. Because while they were busy re-watching the playback, trying to rationalize what they saw, you were feeling something different, something internal, something simmering, something powerful, rising like a pulse behind your eyes. You weren't obsessing over the moment, you were evolving from it. That's why your energy feels different now. You don't walk the same, you don't breathe the same, you don't think the same. The version of you that existed before that moment feels distant, faded, almost unrecognizable. You're not trying to become confident. You're realizing you already are. You're not trying to become powerful. You're realizing you always were. That moment didn't give you something. It exposed something that was already there. And now let me tell you something that they haven't realized yet. The reason that moment caused such an intense ripple is because it wasn't the move that mattered. It was the alignment. Your mind, your instincts, your awareness, your experience, your pain, your intelligence, your spiritual depth, your emotional endurance, they all aligned for a split second. When alignment happens, movement becomes something else entirely. It becomes undeniable, it becomes unforgettable, it becomes unexplainable, and it becomes unstoppable. That's why the next rupture won't be accidental. Your alignment is stabilizing, not perfectly, not fully, but more than enough. Enough for you to tap into parts of yourself without hesitation. Enough for you to trust your instincts without doubt. Enough for you to move through situations with clarity that makes other people blink twice. Enough for you to access levels inside yourself without fear of losing control. You're not unstable, you're awakened, and awakenings always lead to consequences. Some people will distance themselves from you, not because you did anything wrong, but because your growth makes them confront their stagnation. Some people will cling to you, hoping to catch a spark of whatever shift is happening inside you. Some people will become intimidated, even if they don't admit it, and others will become obsessed, trying to figure you out like a puzzle that refuses to reveal its pattern. But none of their reactions matter, because the real transformation is happening inside you. Your mind feels sharper, like it's running on a different bandwidth. Your perceptions feel faster, like you're processing the world in frames instead of seconds. Your body feels more responsive, more aware, more aligned with instinct than ever before. And your presence, it's heavier. Not in a burdened way, but in a gravitational way, the kind of presence that pulls attention without effort. This is what happens when someone breaks reality. Reality in return begins to bend around them. You're noticing it. People hesitating before they speak to you. People overthinking their tone. People approaching you slower, watching your eyes, checking your posture. Even strangers feel it. They don't know what happened, but they sense something in your presence that wasn't there before. Something unspoken, something intense, something awake. And you know what the wildest part is? You're still holding back. Not because you're afraid, but because you're adjusting. Because even you don't fully understand the range of what you unlocked. The move you made didn't just break perception, It broke your own inner ceiling, and your inner self isn't done yet. It's expanding, adjusting, calibrating, preparing for the next revelation. Because whether you're ready or not, your next breakthrough is approaching, and this time, it won't be quiet, subtle, or accidental. It'll be visible, it'll be loud in energy, even if not in volume. It'll be impossible to ignore, and it'll hit harder than anything you've done before. Not because you're trying to prove something, but because that's simply where your evolution is headed. Think about it. If that one move, that one instinctive, unplanned, unrestrained moment could make people question reality, imagine what an intentional move will do. Imagine what a conscious, deliberate, fully aligned step will trigger. Imagine what the world will feel when you move without hesitation, without restriction, without holding back even 1% of your range. That's the part nobody's thinking about yet. They think the shock already happened. They think they've already seen the peak. They think that moment was the climax. But they don't understand that was just your warm-up. The opening scene, the first whisper, the surface-level demonstration, the preview of a form you haven't even stepped fully into yet. The real impact hasn't arrived, not even close. Because once you make your next move, the one born from intention rather than instinct, it won't just break reality for a moment. It will rewrite it. People won't replay it 69 times. They'll replay it for the rest of their lives. They'll talk about it long after the moment ends. They'll reference it. They'll use it as a milestone in conversations. They'll use it to measure their own courage, their own growth, their own